After a young woman was struck and killed by a police cruiser, the Seattle Police Department released body-worn camera footage of one of the investigating officers, wherein he describes the woman's life as not being very valuable. Let's have a look. In the video we're about to see, an investigating officer is addressing the facts surrounding the death of a young woman in Seattle, Washington, after she was allegedly in a crosswalk and was struck by a police cruiser when a police officer was headed toward the scene of an incident. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, totally. All right, brother. Well, yep. I'm sure TCIS is. And oh, he was good. He says, well, normally we don't give voluntary statements. And I said, hey, you're going to have to decide if you wanted to give a statement or not. But it does not seem like there's a criminal investigation going on. Otherwise, there would be other... What's that? Yeah. Otherwise, there might be other people arriving, correct? Yeah, I mean, he's going 50. That's not out of control. That's not reckless for a trained driver. Yeah, lights and sirens. Yeah. Yeah, well, there's some... initially, he said she was in a crosswalk. There's a witness that says, no, she wasn't. But that witness could be different because I don't think she was thrown 40 feet either. I think she went up on the hood, hit the windshield. Then when he hit the brakes, flew off the car. But she is dead. No, it's a regular person. Yeah. Yeah, just write a check. Just... Yeah, $11,000. She was 26 anyway. She had limited value.
So according to this particular officer, the victim here, the person who was killed, was of limited value. She was 26 years old. But he also made some factual statements during that conversation with another officer, I believe. Those factual statements include that the officer who was driving the police cruiser was traveling at 50 miles an hour, that he was traveling with lights and sirens, and while the officer said that there was that the young lady was in a crosswalk, someone else, another witness, said perhaps she was not. So based on his investigation of the scene, he doesn't believe that this young woman was thrown 40 feet. He believes something else occurred. And he also stated that 50 miles an hour is not reckless driving for a trained officer, someone who's trained to drive at high speeds. So we're going to look at an article from the Associated Press regarding what occurred, because some of the facts seem a little different. But if you'll notice, this officer also said $11,000. She was 26 anyway. She had limited value. And immediately thereafter, he cuts off his camera. So let's have a look at the article and see what that has to say. So this is, like I said, an article out of the Associated Press. In a recording, a Seattle police officer joked after a woman's death. He says remarks were misunderstood. A city watchdog agency is investigating after a body-worn camera captured one Seattle Police Department union leader joking with another following the death of a woman who was struck and killed by a police cruiser as she was crossing a street. Daniel Arder, who is the vice president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, responded to the January 23rd crash scene where another officer, Kevin Dave, struck and killed Jaahnavi Kandula, 23, in a crosswalk. So initially, we see that the officer in the video footage got some facts wrong because he indicated that this young woman was 26 and she's actually 23. Dave was driving 74 miles per hour on the way to an overdose call. So again, police vehicles, in fact, all vehicles have a black box inside that tell you what happened just prior to a collision, as long as that black box is not tampered with, or as long as the vehicle does not continue in use after the incident. So likely this information came from a black box or some other device inside the police cruiser that recorded the speed at that time. So here we have 74 miles per hour, whereas the investigating officer indicated that the vehicle was traveling at a mere 50 miles per hour. That calls into question whether or not this investigating officer would still be of the belief that the officer who was driving the vehicle was reckless when he was driving at 74 miles per hour, whether a trained officer, someone who is trained in driving at high speeds, is reckless if they're driving at a speed of 74 miles an hour. Ardura, a drug recognition expert, was assigned to evaluate whether Dave was impaired. So this particular investigator wasn't assigned to determine whether the speed at which the vehicle was moving, where this young woman was at the time that she was struck by the police cruiser. He was there to determine whether or not the other officer was impaired, whether he had been drinking or doing some other drugs at the time that this incident occurred, or perhaps whether or not he was impaired for some psychological issue. But I doubt that because he was a drug recognition expert. Afterward, Ardura left his body-worn camera on as he called Guild President Mike Salon to report what happened. In a recording released by the police department on Monday, Ardura laughs and suggests that Kandula's life had limited value and the city should just write a check. $11,000. She was 26 anyway, Ardura said, inaccurately stating Kandula's age. She had limited value. The article goes on to state that Ardura says, "I intended the comment as a mockery of lawyers," Ardura wrote, according to KTTH. "I laughed at the ridiculousness of how these incidents are litigated and the ridiculousness of how I watched these incidents play out as two parties bargain over a tragedy." The station reported that Ardura acknowledged in the statement that anyone listening to his side of the conversation alone would rightfully believe I was being insensitive to the loss of human life. The comment was not made with malice or a hard heart, he said, but quite the opposite. The case before the Office of Police Accountability was designated as classified. So this is an ongoing case as to whether or not the officer acted in some bad way with respect to this conversation he had with another officer. The Associated Press could not immediately verify the details of Ardura's statement. Kandula was working toward graduating in December with a master's degree in information systems from the Seattle campus of Northeastern University. After her death, her uncle, Ashok Mandula of Houston, arranged to send her body to her mother in India. "The family has nothing to say," he told the Seattle Times, "except I wonder if these men's daughters or granddaughters have value. A life is a life." The King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is conducting a criminal review of the crash. The controversy over Ardura's remarks comes as a federal judge this month ended most federal oversight of the police department under a 2012 consent decree that was meant to address concerns about the use of force, community trust, and other issues. So from this, we can see that obviously federal oversight was deemed necessary at some point for the Seattle Police Department. But with respect to the comments that this officer made, the Associated Press could not verify his statements, but they believe that the statements he made on the body cam footage were him joking not about the woman who passed away, but about lawyers, about people like me, you know, and that he intended the comment as a mockery of lawyers and the system under which, you know, lawyers and others tend to bargain over the value of a person's life. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there who look at what attorneys do when they are trying to seek justice on behalf of their clients, and to do the only thing that can be done in our court system to seek such justice, which is go after money. The court obviously is incompetent to bring back life. The court is obviously incompetent to criminalize certain conduct in a civil trial. Criminal judges can't essentially convict somebody of a crime. So the only thing that a civil attorney can do is get money. And while it may be true that some attorneys tend to over-exaggerate cases or try to get more money than perhaps certain cases are worth, the civil attorney is a necessary component of the justice system. But that said, I do understand Ardura's statements if they were made in the context in which he was making them. And I think that perhaps the bigger question in my mind is it okay for police officers to investigate other police officers, for union leaders to investigate police officers? And this case brings that to the forefront because obviously this person is relating facts to some other leader within the police department, and he seems to be getting the facts wrong. So if he's charged with investigating things and he's getting the facts wrong, then it seems that the investigation isn't going to go very well. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. My name is Nathan Saunders, and this is The Legal Good.